Hi, everybody. Just wanted to make a few comments about this assignment I've just given you for chapters 1 and 2. What I've tried to do in posing the questions or the prompts that I have is to get you to think in a particular way about working with students who have severe, profound disabilities. Because to me, first off, I trained in this area. It was my beginning in special education. In many ways, I think that it really, really challenges us to look at the values that we hold in the field. For example, self determination, autonomy, making informed choices, or even making choices for some people. When we look at all of those values, I think they are particularly difficult to enact or to promote in this population. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you can't. In fact, you have to, it's your job. But it is somewhat difficult. So I tried to focus the questions for this assignment around that notion that functioning in the real world, being able to synthesize skills, being able to make application of skills, generalized skills, the things that we all need to be able to be successful in the world, are the kinds of things that we're going to do, or you're going to do now, as teachers, to provide supports, not services. Okay, so let me just talk about that for a second. There's something that gets said in Illinois all the time that I never heard before till I got here, that I recall, which is servicing people. In my generation, that meant something different. um, but I hear it all the time. I service autistic children. Okay, first of all, it's children with autism. But anyway, I service autistic children. What we're really doing is supporting, and make the distinction. Look at it now and make it clear in your own head. I am going to change my thinking from service model to support model. Because service model is a couple of things. One is it's generally a discipline or something like that that's rather tied to a set of principles, values, ways of doing things. And oftentimes, when you're in services, you're trying to put these disparate parts together. So you're putting PT with OT, you're trying to bring all that together. When you're working with supports, you're making the environment conducive so that a person that you're supporting is able to acquire skills, both in the traditional academic sense, if possible, in this population, okay? But that learning goes on at all times. I'll just give you a quick example. If you have a student who has no communication skills or parent skills, so therefore cannot be able to make choices or to indicate what they want, you might start working with them on a basic yes no kind of skill. So it could be pushing a button. For example, well, geez, I'm saying two or three things, or two or three things are going on in my head. You should not use food as a reinforcer, like almost never. Okay, there's a whole school around that I could tell you later. But well, it's a primary need. Food's a primary need. So for a child who's hungry, to work for the food, it says really that you can't get your primary needs met. The same is true with relationships. Okay, so there's that little side note. The point is that in this population, sometimes using little bits of food is useful. So, for example, if you're teaching something like a red and green button, and the red is no and the green is yes, through several, maybe many, discrete trials, meaning you just literally do the trial over and over, the student begins to understand that yes means I get what I want, no means it goes away. Then you can integrate that all over the classroom. You can do yes, no for where they want to sit. You could do yes, no for I want to go now. Like yes means I want to leave, no means I want to stay here. There's all sorts of things that you can do. It's a simple example, but it's what I'm talking about in terms of building a support rather than just like teaching yes and no in isolation and then wondering why students can't transfer that to something else, okay? Because it has to be integrated, it has to be within the immediate environment for these students to be able to perform successfully. I was just going to give you a funny example of like real environments and using real objects and things like that. When I was first teaching, I had all this fake fruit and vegetable plastic, it hardly even looked like, real fruit or real food. And and we had a little fake cash register, and so we were going to go to the store. So we practice and practice and practice, bringing up fake fruit to a fake cash register. And then when we got to the store, we couldn't figure out why they didn't get it. Well, I mean, honestly, at the time, that was actually a way that a lot of people taught. And I'm not joking you when I couldn't figure out why it didn't transfer. It's funny to me now because it's so obvious. But at the time, I was like, well, we did that. Well, no, we didn't really do it. I had a representation of something that even I said doesn't even look like it, right? And I'm expecting somebody who has a hard time generalizing something they know in this environment and taking it to that environment and being able to replicate it. I've already got that problem, and then I used all this fake stuff. So anyway, I think I've made my point that when we're providing supports, we're trying to make the environment work for this person to be as independent as possible. Okay? So a quick maybe example of what help you understand, right? Is like ramps on buildings. That's a support. What we are saying with ramps, elevators, and things like that, like for example in public schools now where there are elevators in all the schools, it's a support. Okay? What it means is you can't be a part of the community in the way that you need to be without this support. It's the same for students with severe profound disabilities. It is support. That's all we're doing. We're basically just building up a foundation so that, oh, I know a better word for it. We're propping them up, okay, so that they can, at the best level possible, be participatory in the community around them. Okay, so propping up. The only thing I want to say about that is the props need to be rather permanent, or as much as they can be, meaning that they will learn to utilize those supports, and so they do have to be in place. Meaning, like if it's a person, you need to make sure you've trained somebody else or something because you can't pull the props out. Okay, well that's not true. In this population, you're probably not going to pull the props out, most likely. But it is a good way to evaluate the work you're doing, because there are people who will start dropping props, or as we drop them, they're able to internalize and generalize. It's probably just less in this population. I also gave you just an area with some of the disability categories that they talked about, like Down syndrome, Fragile X, etc. And I just asked you to give me a few characteristics about those populations, and they might cross over. What I mean is, I'm just making something up. Short-term memory. It might cross over, meaning, in other words, if you have short-term memory in two categories, if it's appropriate, that's fine. I just wanted to say that. You don't have to try to find a characteristic that's different if it's not. So I put that there for a couple of reasons. One is these are primary categories of disability you're going to see in working with students who have severe profound disabilities. And I want you to know the basic characteristics, okay? This is where I'm probably kind of, for some professors, loosey-goosey. When I was studying back in the day, we took tests for everything. We had tests all the time. And we had to give all these criteria. We had to understand all this stuff about all these diagnoses and categories and stuff. Okay. Which, it's good training. It's not like I'm saying it's bad. But what I'm also saying is we didn't have the internet. So the point is, to me, if you get a student in your classroom with Angelman syndrome, all you have to do is type Angelman syndrome in Google, and you can learn more in 30 minutes than I could teach you in the semester, most likely, right? Do you understand what I mean? Okay, so I'm going to ask you a few characteristic questions, but mostly the questions I'm going to be posing through the semester, and as you'll see here, are really more about how you would actually intervene or support the student. Okay, so like skill synthesis and generalization, social participation, self determination, because I think that, to me, from my background, the best teachers in this area of disability are those who are able to broaden their horizons and lead from their values. Because you're dealing with a very, very, very marginalized population of learners. Okay, so they are very vulnerable to the environment, all sorts of things that we know. So to be able to to be able to I think, be successful and effective, you almost just have to keep the value in front of you at all times. It'd be nice if we could do that with all students all the time. But I think in this particular case, unless you see yourself as an advocate, unless you see yourself as truly being the one thing between this person and their ability to be more independent or live on their own in the world, whatever the goal is, I think it really is more powerful than knowing all the characteristics. So you'll see me asking questions about things like that, like self-determination, or advocacy, or self-advocacy, which is another interesting areas to watch some students, most of them adults now, who have very profound disabilities, who still have the ways and means to advocate for themselves, which is really exciting. So I really love this course because I loved working with these students, and working at Amundsen right now, I don't have any students who would be in the area of severe profound, but they are lower functioning students than is typical for the norm. And I've really enjoyed it a lot because I think these students just bring such interesting perspectives on the world. And it also, to me, is like two things. One is, I always say I feel like I'm an investigator or detective, because you're always nosing around to try to understand what's going on. Who is this person? Why did they do this? Why did they do that? Why did they respond to this way? Or why did they respond to that? You get the point. So I always say a lot of times it's like being a really good investigator and a really good detective and somebody who digs in and sees it and all those sorts of things. And the other thing is, I really, I'm not a real kumbaya guy. I don't, when everybody's like, oh, the special children, the special children, I'm like, whatever. But the work in this population, it's so interpersonal. And I mean, when you're changing someone's diaper or you're helping them eat, I could come up with numerous things that we, as the support personnel, no matter how you try, we're sort of intrusive. We're sort of there in people's lives. So they really develop with us, I think, a very personal relationship. I don't mean personal like violating boundaries. I mean personal like we work together and we are together in a way that makes us unique, especially in a school setting, right? I value that. I value building strong relationships with people who have a hard time building relationships, and then guiding their learning and their ability to be in the community from the perspective of a really strong alliance, maybe a strong alliance better than saying personal relationship, but I think you get the idea. So, anyway, in these two chapters, I've just tried to focus on some things that I believe are more relevant to your getting into the classroom and working. But do please read the text, okay? Because I'm not going to be able to go into as much detail. Well, it's two things. I'm not able to go as into much detail as would be appropriate. I get well as we have the time to do. How's that? So please look at the text and make sure that you pay attention to the material there, and that you look at it and try to make application of that, because again, it's like the things that you can get if you need them. But I also just want to make sure that you get that kind of depth. And the stuff that I want to do this semester is help you be ready to walk into the classroom tomorrow, right? And have some sense of how to map that out so that you feel comfortable right away. Okay, so it was fun to talk to you for a little bit, and I'll be posting the next module soon, and I'll see you again on video when that happens. Okay, take care.